It's the final weekend of the regular season. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone who is watching on the Varsity Channel on YouTube, who is listening wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. You know the deal. It's the Phil Steele Show here with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Phil Steele, at Phil Steele 042. I'm Kyle Schassberger coming from Nassau, from the Bahamas, Paradise Island, the Atlantis. Don't get too jealous, Phil. You're going to be able to enjoy all the football this weekend while I'm wrapped up in basketball. So it's kind of... my attention is not where it needs to be, and that's why I'm glad I'm talking to you right now. And we've got the lock doctor himself at Tripp on Twitter, on X, who's going to help us handicap and go through all of these games this weekend. I'm here for basketball, Phil, but, look, I've been jonesing for some football conversation. I know we're all geeked up, psyched up for what Week 13 has in store. So why don't we just get right into it? Because I know the people, there's a lot of prior commitments on the table this weekend and a lot of food, a lot of tryptophan. So let's get right to the Egg Bowl, shall we?
Sounds good. And, this is a game where the home team is actually 0-8 against the spread. So the visitor is covered 8 in a row. I like that because I like Ole Miss in this one. I think they're the much better team. As I've mentioned in previous weeks talking about Mississippi State, when I go through their schedule on every game this year, I haven't been impressed in a single one. Even last week against Southern Miss, they won by 21 and they covered, right? Well, in the fourth quarter, they're up by 7. They get one long run for a touchdown. Then they get an interception. They flip a lateral. They score another touchdown and get the cover. Not an impressive game at all against Southern Miss, and they haven't really had one all year. Meanwhile, Ole Miss comes into this with Jackson Dart, with Judkins playing better at the running back spot. They've got the defense. They're playing with legitimate revenge. They lost this game last year. So I like Ole Miss minus the points over Mississippi State. I also like the under. The under's cashed 7 in a row in this series.
That one will start at 7:30 Thanksgiving night, ESPN. Right now the Rebels are laying about 11.55.5 over-under total. The only game on Thursday. So, Tripp, take us to Black Friday.
All right, Phil, you said you like the under there. I want to see if you like the under here because it's pretty risky. Iowa at Nebraska. The total on this one, 26.5. Iowa just taking this thing to a whole new level with these totals this year. Nebraska actually a 2.5-point favorite here. Nebraska won last year, so maybe a little revenge factor for Iowa. The Cornhuskers won as an 11-point dog last year, but Iowa's 8-2 in the last 10 in the series straight up. They wrapped up the Big Ten West. Nebraska can make a bowl if they win this week, but 26.5, that might even scare me off.
Well, I normally have conversations with my computer every week, Tripp, when it comes upon some interesting numbers. And this is when we had a conversation. I look up to see what the projected final score my computer has on the game. You ready for this? 9-7. So it's even though the total's 26.5, my computer thinks that's way too much. You got 10.5 points extra on the top of it. So I actually do like the under. I think you've got two excellent defenses here. And you've got two offenses that, with Nebraska, they got to not turn the ball over. And I thought Chuba Purdy did a good job last week, only turning it over once. Iowa's offense is playing better. Deacon Hill's starting to be a much better passer. He was like a 34% completion guy. Now he's up near 50 because he's hitting over 50% each of the last 2 weeks. They've got the run game, but Nebraska's got a really good defense. I play conservative. I punt the ball. Punt's not a bad word. And like I said, my computer's got it 9-7, so I'm going to lean with the under. I think the situation favors Nebraska, as you mentioned. That win gets them to a bowl game. Iowa might look ahead to the Big Ten title game, but you got to think Iowa knows they're going to get beat in the Big Ten title game. So let's go ahead and get a win as well. I don't want to bet against Iowa. I don't want to bet against Nebraska in this situation. So even though the total is 26.5, let's go with the under.
It's incredible how much that total just continues to drop with each week that passes for Iowa football games. I mean, that is one of the more entertaining with all of the storylines, all of the buzz. Again, the on-the-field, the off-the-field stuff we've dealt with, the Iowa unders, and that narrative has just been it's been sensational. All right, TCU at 14th ranked Oklahoma. The Sooners are laying a large, thick 10 points, 63.5 is the total 12 o'clock game on Fox. Phil, these are two of the nation's more prolific offenses, and Oklahoma just barely hung on against BYU, winning by a touchdown. TCU last week won pretty handily against Baylor. What do you think about the Horned Frogs' chances on the road in Norman to cover double digits?
Yeah, and this is one where, last week's results I'm going to throw out a little bit. First of all, Oklahoma at BYU, I think they sleepwalked through that game. They barely survived, got a 100-yard interception return for a touchdown, but it's a game where I think maybe they were just not focused on it after the big West Virginia win. I think we'll see a much better Oklahoma this week. And keep in mind, Dylan Gabriel didn't play the second half. It was Jackson Arnold in the second half because Gabriel was out. I expect Gabriel to return this week. Now, at TCU, you go into the half last week, it's 14-10. What happened in the second half is remember, Dave Aranda had all that success a few years back, going for it on fourth down and converting and winning games. Well, what happened in the second half is Baylor went for it had 3 possessions, went for it on fourth down 3 times, twice in their own territory, got stopped all 3 times. TCU got 3 short touchdowns and pulled away to a 42-17 win. Chandler Morris did come back last week, got in 5 attempts, may play more this week, but Josh Hoover's doing a fine job. But I just think Oklahoma's a better team, and they're at home. They're pretty tough at home this year. I'm going to go with the Sooners minus the points in that one.
Phil, I wanted to talk about New Mexico again this week because you had such a good beat on them last week. You called it. They were getting 23 points against Fresno. They end up winning the game outright. You told everybody about that one with all the reasoning and everything. I know we were racing through it at the end of the show last week, but you had it, I think, on your tour and on the site. But this week, I want to see if they're back on your radar again. They're at home. They're taking on Utah State, and they're getting nearly a touchdown here.
Yeah, both teams got some injured quarterbacks. For Utah State, Cooper Lagasse and Hillstead both banged up. Might be Levi Williams, the former Wyoming quarterback. And for New Mexico, Dylan Hopkins, the UAB transfer, got injured late last week, and Devin Dampier came in. But Dampier and Hopkins have been splitting snaps most of the year. So I think Dampier will be just fine in this offense. I like the way that Ja'Cory Croxy Merritt's running the ball. He had, I believe, 200 yards last week, and they really moved. They have 528 yards. I tell you what, this new UAB offense, they have doubled last year's production. It's not last year's New Mexico team. I think they finished the season on a winning note. Get to 5 wins. And really, if you're New Mexico and you're wondering, do we get rid of Gonzalez or not? Keep the guy. I mean, first of all, who are you going to get to come in New Mexico? It's a tough place to play. The guy loves the place. And if he gets you to 5 wins, you got to keep him. So I say New Mexico plus the points, and I will call for the outright upset here.
Phil, let's go to the American. If UTSA and the Roadrunners can pick up a win at number 24 Tulane, they'll be playing for the AAC championship the following week. 3.5 is the spread here with the Green Wave laying at 52, the total 330 on ABC. Very intriguing matchup. And again, a conference we talked about last week, how crowded it was up at the top. 330 ABC from Yulman Stadium.
Yeah, winner gets into the title game. And for UTSA, remember they started out the season 1-3 with a lackluster win over Texas State. But since they've got the conference play, they've been dominant. They're beating conference foes by 19 points per game. And the one game they didn't cover in conference play was against East Carolina. East Carolina got a late touchdown for the backdoor cover. So they've been absolutely dominant. Tulane, on the other hand, last week was their biggest win of the season as far as margin goes against an American opponent. They won by 16 points over FAU. Other than that, it's been mostly close. Their average win is by 9 points per game, and they're actually just plus 22 yards per game in conference play, or plus 59 yards per game, in conference play. UTSA is plus 100. I like the fact you're getting 3 and a hook here. I think that could be valuable. I think one of these teams wins the game by a field goal. Wouldn't surprise me if it's Tulane. Wouldn't surprise me if it's UTSA. But since the spreads climbed above that 3.5, I'm going to go with red hot UTSA plus the 3.5.
Let's jump over to the SEC, 9th-ranked Missouri, 9-2 on the year. They might be headed to a New Year's Six Bowl here, but Missouri struggled last week. They had to come from behind, kick that last-second field goal to take down Florida 33-31 in the series against Arkansas, and they're on the road in Fayetteville this week. 8-2 in the last 10 straight up. Sam Pittman, I was a little worried he might be coaching for his job, but the AD said he's back, and I'm glad because I like Sam Pittman. Mizzou's laying 7.5 on the road at Arkansas. What side do you like here, Phil?
Yeah, I'm a Sam Pittman fan as well. And, I think that's huge. He's a player's coach. So the players are going to be so enthused that he is definitely coming back. They can get those question marks out of their mind. Also, this is probably KJ Jefferson's final home game. So I got to expect maximum effort from an Arkansas team who, 2 weeks ago against Auburn didn't give any maximum effort. They gave a very poor effort in that game. Talk about a game Florida should have won last week. I mean, it was what, 4th and 17, I believe, at that point in the game. Florida had a 99.3% chance of winning, and somehow Missouri ends up pulling out the game at the end, 33-31. I think when you look at Arkansas, they've played 4 ranked teams this year. They've actually covered all 4. They covered against LSU. They were only lost by 3. Covered against Ole Miss, only lost by 7. Covered against Alabama, only lost by 3. And I believe A&M was ranked at the time no, let me think with the anyway, the other team that they were ranked, they covered against. So 4-0 against ranked teams, really good situation. Playing with legitimate revenge. And as you touched on, Tripp, Arkansas is 7-2 straight up, 8-1 against the spread in the series. Playing with revenge. I like Arkansas plus the points at home.
Make sure I unmute myself as I was chugging my. Yes, I had to unmute myself.
There's Kyle on vacation in Atlantis,
trying to do too many
too much sun for us.
Yeah,
too much sun.
It's canned water. I have not seen the ocean yet, okay? I've been here since Monday afternoon. Phil, you have no idea what I had to endure to get here. I totaled my vehicle at 2:45 a.m. on the way to the airport when Bambi decided to jump in front of me on the interstate going 71 miles per hour. I had to pay an Uber driver under the table. I show up at the airport an hour 15 before my flight, miss it because I got to wait in line for 2 hours in the international agent line, get rebooked. Somehow I make it here by 3-4 o'clock. I mean, it has been a wild last couple of days. So
have you done the
I'm hoping
leap
to go
of
see the
faith
ocean
yet?
when we're done. No, I have not. Explain. What is that? I've heard about the shark slide. Are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, you're here and you basically go straight down and right through the sharks. It's
Yes.
something you got to try that. You got to go through that.
Make sure you get that on film too.
Well, I will do my best, Tripp. I'm a one-man band kind of.
But with
here,
your luck
okay?
with the car and the deer, I don't know if you want to risk the sharks.
I'm going right to that thing as soon as we get done here. All right, I got to cut a video. I got to cut a video for the Hogs for social. Which, by the way, I'm like Kirk Herbstreit here. We're talking about the Battle Line rivalry. Naturally, Tripp's going to ask about that game because I'm going to recuse myself. Okay, because I'm pumping all the Razorback sunshine here this weekend. That will be a fun one though, for sure. It'll be fun out at Boise State as the Broncos are hosting Air Force 6.5. Boise is laying 46 as a total, 4 o'clock on FS1. Boise State making the head coaching change last week, Phil, and then picking up a win.
Yeah, and that it surprised me a little bit. In fact, last week I wondered what kind of frame of mind Boise would be in because Andy Avalos, I felt, was a good coach. He had him poised to win the Mountain West title this year, and they surprisingly let him go. But the team came out, fired up, played with passion, poured a bucket on the interim head coach. So they're ready to play. And Ashton Genty, I thought he was going to be out for the year. He's a 1,000-yard rusher, running back. He actually returned last week. So they've got the Genty, Halani running back duo. Taylon Green is playing better at the quarterback spot. He was splitting time with Matson earlier, but now that Matson's injured, he's been taking full reps, and I think he's becoming even a better quarterback. And this is a game where Boise has done extremely well against the Air Force option. In fact, they're 5-1 straight up and against the spread in the series. Now with Air Force, a little banged up at quarterback. Zach Larrier's not going to be here again this week. They're in a bit of a slump. They have lost 3 in a row. The spread's 6.5. Tough to give that to a service academy, but I'm going to go with Boise on the blue turf, playing a lot better. And my last 4 weeks average game grade is huge in this one on Boise State. It says they've been playing at 109 level the last 4 weeks. Meanwhile, Air Force is playing at an 89 level. That's saying Boise by about 23. So I'm going to take Boise minus the 6.5.
All right, we've got a revenge game for Texas this week. They're taking on TCU. This one's in Austin. 7th-ranked Longhorns favored by 12.5 here. They lost to Texas Tech last year in overtime, 37-34. Another note on this game, Phil, I want to get your lean on the 12.5, but I'm also curious what you think about the 53.5 on the total because last 5 meetings in this one, they've all gone over. But we know Texas Tech, they tend to score a little bit more at home. Didn't happen last week because, of course, I love the over with UCF, and that didn't hit. But seemed to be a little bit different team when they're on the road.
And UCF made that extra point and went to overtime. You would have had a really good chance to cover in that one.
That's right.
I would lean with the over. You look at Texas Tech, the last 3 weeks, they've had Baron Morton back at the QB spot, and their offense has picked up 24 points last week. But I think that it's getting better by the week. And remember last year when Texas Tech beat Texas, Quinn Ewers was out. He did not play. It was actually Hudson Card at the quarterback spot for him. So Texas had a backup quarterback for that. They are playing with legitimate revenge. And I'm just going to go back to the magazine at this. If you look at the front, my Big 12 rankings, I've got Texas Tech #1 in every single position category, and they just look like a team. They look big, they look strong, they look fast. And Texas Tech doesn't play as well on the road. They've already lost at Wyoming, they already lost at West Virginia, they lost at BYU. So I like Texas minus the points, and I do like your over in this one, Tripp.
Oregon and Oregon State. The Civil War, the Ducks are laying 13-62 is the total 8:30 game on Fox. Final one we're going to talk about on Friday, Phil. When you bring up the magazine, just a teaser, we'll have Phil's Power Plays here coming up at the end of the show, but too, a special offer for our viewers, for our listeners, since we are at the end of the college football season when it comes to the magazine. And go to philsteele.com always for more information. Bet smarter, not harder. Be more like Phil Steele. But the Beavers and the Ducks, Phil. This is an 11-on-6 matchup. Oregon really flexed their muscles in Tempe last week. Bo Nix, I think, is separate. I think it's Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels at this point when it comes to the Heisman. I mean, what Daniels is doing cannot be ignored with LSU. We've seen 3 lost quarterbacks win it with Lamar and RG3. And I understand Bo's numbers are super impressive, but what a conversation I'm hoping we can have after this week. But Oregon State suffering that loss against Washington. Can they bounce back and cover nearly 2 touchdowns against the Ducks at Autzen?
Yeah, with Oregon State, you basically bet the home team, right? They were 17-1 straight up and against the spread at home into last week. And last week against Washington, they had a 22-14 first down edge. They had a yardage edge in the game. They came up 2 points short. And unfortunately, they were actually favored in that game. Part of the reason they were 17-1 against the spread. So when I look at this game, 2 things I see is, first of all, last year when these two played, we talk about Bo Nix. Bo Nix was banged up. He had a bum ankle. I think he only ran the ball like 2 times all game for 5 yards. He was basically a pocket passer. He wasn't the Bo Nix that we know that can be mobile and is dangerous on the run. So even with a banged up Bo Nix, that thing was 31-10 in Reser Stadium, late third quarter. Oregon had the game completely in hand. Guess what? At the end of the game, they lost. So if Oregon gets up in this game, let's say they're up by 21. Don't you think that Dan Lanning's going to be walking up down the sideline saying, hey, last year you blew a 31-10 lead against these guys. Now, come on. So I could see Oregon pouring it on late. I also like the fact that Oregon State's on the road. They're not as good on the road as they are at home. They're already owned straight-up losses this year to Arizona and Washington State, a couple of games they were favored in, by the way. So even though it's the last game, the last Civil War, and I know Oregon State's going to give their very best shot, I think Oregon might just be the best team out there. They're #1 in my average game grades. They run the ball for 6 yards a carry. They complete nearly 80% of their passes. They've got a healthy Bo Nix. The defense is dominant against the run. The defense gets 31 sacks. This is really a good Oregon team, and they're very dangerous. In Autzen Stadium this year, they're only winning their games by 37 points per game. So I like the Ducks minus the points.
All right, it's a noon kick in Ann Arbor for the game. Ohio State at Michigan. Wolverines favored by 3 in this one. If Michigan's going to win, they're going to have to keep Marvin Harrison Jr. in check, and they need a big bounce-back game from J.J. McCarthy. Last week against Maryland, 12 of 23 for 141 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. That's not the J.J. McCarthy we've been used to this year that was completing 80% of his passes. He's got to do way better. I feel like Ohio State, really, if you just talk to people about this game, I think we expected a month ago, this would have been a much bigger spread in favor of Michigan, but Ohio State gaining a lot of momentum here. What side do you like on this?
Yeah, if you would ask me, Tripp, to your point, if you would ask me a month ago, who do I like in this game, I would have said Michigan by over a touchdown. They're the better team. They're at home, and you just got to love Michigan. You can't go against them. They've got the defense. They've got the offense. But as you touched on, J.J. McCarthy hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in 3 weeks. So it's been a while. And their run game is not as dynamic as it was last year. Blake Corum is a touchdown machine, but gets the ball at the 1 yard line. He's averaging under 5 yards a carry, and Donovan Edwards averaging 3.4. And the narrative I heard all off season was Michigan just beat up Ohio State last year, right? I believe your final total was that Michigan ran for 252 yards, 7.2 yards per carry on Ohio State. But that's not how the game was played. If you watch that game, Ohio State actually had a 16-4 first down edge at the half. They gave up 2 long passes. In the second half, they gave up like 2 80-plus yard runs. Other than that, at the line of scrimmage, Michigan averaged 2.9 yards per carry. So they did not beat up Ohio State at the line of scrimmage. They had 2 long runs for touchdowns. And other than that, Ohio State's defense played well. Now, Ohio State's done a great job this year limiting the big plays. They've only allowed 1 play over 50 yards all year. The defense is holding opponents to 101 yards per game, below their season average. And the key for me with Ohio State between now and 4 weeks ago is Travion Henderson. Their run game was average 4 weeks ago. They were getting 3-4 yards a carry. Now with Travion Henderson back, they're averaging over 5 yards per carry. How do you, if you go to stop Travion Henderson, what do you do against Marvin Harrison, for God's sake? And Kyle McCord has got 3 big wins under his belt: at Notre Dame, home to Penn State, at Wisconsin. He's no longer a first-year starter. In fact, he's playing better right now than J.J. McCarthy is the last 4 weeks. So add it all up, this is a game where Ryan Day has got to win this game. He can't lose 3 in a row to Michigan. I like Ohio State plus the points to win this one outright. And it's different. Remember Michigan, Penn State, I like the under. Ohio State, Penn State, I like the under. This one's had 9 straight overs. There's been games when I thought it'd be low scoring, and it hasn't been. So I like Ohio State. I'm not going with the under in this one.
Interesting. Love it. Bragging rights also on the line for one other state, the Bluegrass state, and that is Louisville and Kentucky. 10th-ranked Cardinals coming off. They're in this stretch, Phil, where they can collect some hardware. The Schellenberger Trophy they picked up in the win over Miami last week, 38-30. I didn't even know that was a thing. Now they're battling for the 110-pound Governor's Cup, this big old janky, girthy thing. And Louisville has dropped 4 in a row. So I think revenge is one of those things you talk about a lot. I think that's a major factor here. The Cards are laying 7. They're at home, 12 o'clock ABC, 50.5 is the total. And, if Louisville can run the table here, take home what is the Governor's Cup, win the ACC championship, possibly can still backdoor their way into the playoff.
Yeah, they can, no doubt about it. And generally, Kyle, when I look at a team that's got the championship game on deck, I like to go against that team, right? But there is no freaking way that Louisville looks past Kentucky. Have you watched the Louisville-Kentucky games the last 4 years?
It's been very lopsided.
Absolute beatdowns. Kentucky has taken away their manhood, dominated them at the line of scrimmage. It hasn't even been close. The big blue offensive line has just had its way with Louisville, and Louisville hasn't been able to run the ball in Kentucky a lick. It's just been total domination by Kentucky. But here's a question for you guys, and see who gets the right answer. How many teams with a winning record has Kentucky beaten so far this year? Throw out a number.
1. 2.
I want to say 0 because I think I'm trying to get
0.
Oh, wow.
0. How many teams with a winning record has Louisville beat this year?
5.
7.
Wow.
So that's a pretty big difference. And I like the way Louisville's running the football with Jordan and with IG or Isaac Correndo. Jack Plummer can throw it. Their defense is tough against the run. They're giving up 3.3 yards per carry. Jeff Brown is going to challenge their manhood here this week and deserves to. And I think Louisville is the much better team. You look at Kentucky on the year, they're being outgained by 8 yards per game on the season. Louisville's dominating teams with 126 yards per game on the year. And the home team in Louisville games is magic. Granted, the last 2 weeks it hasn't been that way, but I got to play Louisville at home to, and this is a legitimate revenge game for the Cardinals this week. Cardinals.
All right, Texas A&M at LSU. Jaden Daniels is actually now the favorite to win the Heisman, and I'm glad he's in the conversation because I've mentioned it a couple times this year. He's just played so well. I think Bo Nix probably still ends up winning it, and I know that's your guy there, Phil. But Jaden Daniels leading the best statistical offense in the country right now. They're 7-3 over the last 10 against A&M, but 3-3 the last 6. That's right down the middle. I like the spot for LSU here. They're great at home, plus little revenge factor here because they lost in College Station last year.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, if Jimbo Fisher was still there at Texas A&M and they were, still playing, I would probably lean with the underdog here. But now you've got an interim head coach. You wonder which players are thinking about where they're going to go. And with LSU, even if they get up by 10 or 17 points, Jaden Daniels is going to play till the final whistle here. They could be up by 24. He's still going to be in the game, much like last week against Georgia State. I think they brought the backups in with 3 minutes to go in the game, up 56-14. So they need Jaden Daniels to win the Heisman. They're going to let him do whatever he needs to do to get it. A&M's got a good defense, but I just wonder with the whole interim head coach, the fact that Jalen Henderson's been taking over at QB the last 2 weeks, what's the frame of mind for A&M? So I agree with you. If you're going to play this game, you got to play LSU because they're going to be trying to score in the fourth quarter.
All right, let's bounce over to a game that I will not be betting on. Houston at UCF. The Knights favored by 13.5. And this is just one of those things this season, Houston and UCF. I think if I combine every game that I've picked between these two, I'm probably 0 for, 22 or whatever it is. But Houston's lost 4 out of their last 5. They're going in the wrong direction. UCF does have a second week in a row here to try to get bowl eligible. What do you think on this one?
Yeah, and I thought they outplayed Texas Tech last week. Missed field goal, that missed extra point really hurt them. And this is a team where if I didn't know the record of the team, I would say UCF is much better than the 5-6 record that they come in. The Oklahoma lost by 2 points earlier in the year. The Baylor loss where they blew that big lead. Last week's game against Texas Tech, the blowout of Oklahoma State. I like what I've seen out of UCF, and I still feel they're actually one of the middle teams of the Big 12. At the bottom of the Big 12 is Houston this year. Now, they're in a clear rebuilding year. You got to give Dana Holgorsen some slack, especially after what he did the last 2 years for the Cougars. But this is a rebuilding year, and their quarterback situation a bit iffy. Donovan Smith has a 21-12 ratio, which looks good, but he's not good at specific times, like when the game's on the line. Last week, they led Oklahoma State and then got beat by 13. I actually like you at UCF at home to get bowl eligible with the win here, and they're always dangerous in the bounce house. And as they showed to Oklahoma State earlier, they can put some margin on a team if they get up.
Phil, moving to 2 o'clock, ESPN Plus game. It's a rematch of the NIT championship in Las Vegas. Sorry, again, preoccupied with basketball. This means nothing to Phil, but it's UAB
and I could not even have a clue who you're talking about right now. I have no clue.
Actually, most basketball fans probably wouldn't either because it's the NIT. It's the tournament that people aren't actually trying to get into. UAB at North Texas, though. Shameless plug, though. If you want to support your boy, for anybody listening or watching, Arkansas Game Day app all the week, or the Varsity Network app, which many of you should already have to listen to all of our school broadcasts. 6 o'clock Central Time, Arkansas and Stanford, Game 1 of the Battle for Atlantis on Wednesday. Anyways, back to football. Blazers and Mean Green. UAB is catching 3, Phil, 74.5, a very, very sizable total. Again, 2 o'clock game on ESPN+.
And Kyle, unfortunately, I won't be watching. I can tell you that up to this point, I have not watched a single second of basketball. And when March is done, when March Madness is over, I will still not have watched a single second of basketball. But that's a whole nother point. Let's talk about this game here. And I like the way North Texas is playing down the stretch. You look at their the 4 losses that they had prior to last week's win. They were to Tulane, Memphis, UTSA, SMU, 4 of the top teams in the American Conference, and they were fairly competitive in those games. A 7-point loss, a 3-point loss, and an 8-point loss among the 4 losses. And then last week they led Tulsa 35-21. Now defense has been the problem, but big news for them. All season long, they've been number 133 in my defensive rankings, allowing opponents over 100 yards above their season average. They moved up to 132 last week. They're no longer last. I don't even know who's last. I got to go find that out. But with UAB, they've been an up and down team all season. They beat FAU, got blown out by Navy, beat Temple, but Temple played them pretty good last week. So I think the up-down turns into a down this week. And I actually like North Texas at home. And I actually thought when I was going through this game, I'm like, okay, well, the spread's probably 7, right? 7, 8. The spread's 3. So I like North Texas minus the points.
Yeah, cheap one.
All right, let's head out west. San Jose State, man, I needed that cover late last week, and they just couldn't get it against San Diego State, and I ended up 5. It was close. Yeah, it was close. They're on the road taking on UNLV. You talk about a team that knows how to cover. That's the Running Rebels. They're 10-1 against the spread this year. Best team in the country, ATS. San Jose State, though, in the last 10 in this series, they're 8-2 straight up, and they're pretty good against the spread against UNLV, too. It's a different UNLV team, though, this year. What do you like here, Phil?
I'm going to call this one, I call this a popcorn game. In other words, I'm just going to get popcorn and watch it, because how do you go against San Jose? Ever since that early start where they lost to USC, Oregon State, Toledo, Air Force, Boise, they've been dominant. 5-1 against the spread the last 6. I love the way Cordero's throwing the football. Robinson's running it. The defense is playing well, and they're plus 84 yards per game in conference play. UNLV's 10-1 against the spread. You going to bet against that? I mean, they got Maeva at the quarterback spot doing well. Ever since he took over for Brumfield, it's been great. Their defense, it has allowed opponents 21 yards above their season average, but they're plus 83 yards per game. They're at home. I think it's going to be a great game to watch. No way do I bet against either of these two teams.
Yeah, I don't blame you in that situation. The Iron Bowl, Phil. Crimson Tide, 8th-ranked Alabama, going to Jordan-Hare as 14-point favorites, 48.5. Is the total, 3:30 on CBS. Tripp already mentioned it. 26-point favorites, Auburn was, against my boy, Jerry Kill, and New Mexico State. And the Maggies went to the Plains, and they laid the smackdown. 31-10 was the final. So Auburn is limping into this one. I'm sure the fans are just thrilled to have Auburn coming off such a abysmal effort against their in-state rival. This game means everything to both fan bases. And Alabama's already clinched spot in the SEC title game. They're trying to get into the playoff. What motivation is here for Auburn? Well, we know it's the state battle. I mean, it again, they can correct so many misfortunes. So for that reason alone, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's 2-3 all time against Nick Saban.
Yeah, the value is definitely there with Auburn, because last week the line would have been 10. Now it's 14.5 because of their loss. And Auburn, here's an interesting point. I believe they were the first ever team to cover the spread by 40 points one week, like they did against Arkansas 2 weeks ago, and then lose to the spread by 40 points the next week, like they did against New Mexico State. And there was nothing fluky about that game. New Mexico State just dominated start to finish, out first down them, out yarded them, everything like that. And this has been a home team series, believe it or not. The home team is 9-2 straight up in the series, 9-1-1 against the spread. Alabama's actually lost 2 of their last 3 trips here to Jordan-Hare. So there's a lot that you could make the case for Auburn. I just can't go against this Alabama team. I think when you look at Alabama, compare them right now to where they were at the start of the year, they're so much superior. They'd be a double-digit favorite over that opening week Alabama team, which had question marks at quarterback, question marks on the offensive line. And remember, I've talked about Alabama's offensive line at length early in the year, all the sacks they were giving up. The last 3 weeks, they've given up 3 sacks. So the offensive line's playing better. Jalen Milroe's playing better. The defense is playing great, holding opponents to 101 below their season average. And there's no look ahead. I mean, they had their look ahead game last week against Chattanooga when they only won 66-10. They'll be fired up for this one against Auburn. So it's either Alabama or nothing, but you don't want to overreact to last week's loss for Auburn, because that was just a completely different team. Remember, at home this year, they lost to Ole Miss by 7, and they lost to Georgia by 7. Now they're playing Alabama.
Yeah, I think in this one, there's definitely angles for Auburn, like you said, but I lean Alabama too. I think one of the things that kept popping up into my head was the Georgia game. I think the spread was right about the same as it is for this Alabama game, but that was a different Georgia team. Georgia wasn't playing A-plus football when they went down to Auburn, and it was kind of a tight game. Alabama's playing so well right now. Hard for me to go against the Tide in that one.
Good call.
Thank you. Let's jump right back over to the Pac-12. Arizona, talk about a team on a heater. They won 5 in a row. So impressive last week against Utah. And Jed Fish, that might be your coach of the year right there. He's done an excellent job. They're favored by 10.5 this week on the road, rivalry game at Arizona State. It is a double-digit spread here, so I have to pause for that. But do you think Arizona State has any chance of slowing down Noah Fifita in an offense that is just really clicking right now?
2 weeks ago, Arizona went to Colorado and won by 3. The game they needed a late field goal to pull it out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, they were super impressive against Utah last weekend. And if you're playing Arizona, we've won every single week except for the last time they were a double-digit favorite when they played Colorado. So I think in Arizona State's case, they've got the defense. They've got an interesting offense. They've been playing because of the offensive line. They opened up the swinging gate, and they've been using Scatabo as a Wildcat quarterback, Badger as a Wildcat quarterback. They may get Jaden Rashada back for this one. He's missed a good portion of the season. Trenton Bourquet has been a placeholder. He's got 1 touchdown pass, 4 interceptions. But if they get Rashada back, that could be a good thing as well. They're at home. This is their bowl game. Everybody's patting Arizona on the back. I'd lean a little bit with the dog, but it's tough to go against Arizona, like you said.
Phil, the Commonwealth Cup, Virginia Tech, 2.5-point favorites on the road in Charlottesville at Virginia. Cavaliers got Duke again last week, a place the Blue Devils hadn't won since 2013, so not all that surprising. But again, it's been a theme the last few weeks. The Cavaliers are playing inspired football, playing their best football under Tony Elliott. They're dogs at home against their in-state rival, 3:30 ACC Network, but they've only won 1 game in this series in the last 18 times that they've met. Game didn't even take place last year due to the tragic circumstances. Virginia Tech, Virginia, what do you like about this one, Phil?
Yeah, I liked Virginia against Duke last week. Enjoyed that game. Anthony Calandria playing very well at the quarterback spot. And, Virginia's been playing. I mean, they only lost to Louisville by 7 2 weeks ago. They lost to Miami by 3. They've been playing better. They even beat North Carolina. But yeah, I just look at the series history. I mean, Virginia Tech 17-1 straight up. And I was I liked Virginia Tech over NC State last week. And I was able to flip stations or move TVs around where that wasn't even my main TV the second half of the day because there was no way, even though they came back and made it a 7-point game somehow, I sort of lost track of it at the end because NC State was just beating them down in the first half. But I think you'll see a better performance from Virginia Tech, and they need a win to get to a bowl game, which is nice motivation. Kyron Drones is your quarterback, been playing well. He gives you the mobility. He's got almost 600 yards rushing. I feel they have the defensive edge. They're holding opponents to 40 yards per game below their season average. Virginia actually allows teams 3 above. In conference play, Virginia Tech is actually plus 92 yards per game. Virginia is actually minus 16. So I think VT's the better game. They've got the motivation of getting to a bowl game. I'm going to take Virginia Tech in this one.
We've got the Apple Cup this weekend in Seattle. Washington, a big favorite here, 16.5 at home against Washington State. The Cougs get a much-needed win against Colorado last Friday. They were on such a schneid there. Now they kind of turn around, still have a pulse, and if they were able to pull a huge upset here, it would make them bowl eligible. But we know Washington has too much to play for. They've got to stay undefeated. And this is kind of a tune-up game for, you would think, Oregon the week after. And they need to get back on track because even though they've won these games last week, it was an ugly win. They did what they had to do to get out of Reser Stadium, where nobody seems to be able to go in there and win. But be nice to get a good game under their belt going into the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, I think this is a really good situational game for Washington State. First of all, Washington State is one of the Pac-2. So they know that their rival is leaving them, although it's good to see that the series got extended. And as you mentioned, they finally got back on track last week. Now, they did get 3 defensive or special teams touchdowns against Colorado, but still had a 469 to 215-yard edge. But look at Washington's wins the last 7 games. They've won by 7. They've won by 3. They've won by 8. They've won by 9. They've won by 10. They've won by 5. And they won by 2. What's the spread?
16.5.
None of those are by 16.5. And you've got the Pac-12 title game on deck, which is huge.
Okay.
Got to play your best game against Oregon. I like Washington State plus the points in this one. They'll be much more fired up for this. And I have not seen Washington get any margin.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. Okay. First off, Jordan Travis, I love you. And I hate to see what happened last weekend. That was just that was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen as a FSU fan. This week, they've got to go to the Swamp. And FSU is still favored They're favored by 6.5. I see the total at 49.5. 7 o'clock kick. Tate Rodemaker, if you remember last year, he got thrown into the fire at Louisville, and he played well. After a series or two, he settled down, hit a lot of throws, and I think he is a capable quarterback. This is just such a different situation in the Swamp. That's going to be a really tough environment to go into. All the pressure here is on Rodemaker. It's on FSU. I don't know. I have to lean with Florida here with that environment going up, and they're going to have a backup quarterback from what I understand too. I don't think Graham Mertz is playing, so kind of a toss up here. But if I had to pick a side, I'd probably lean with Florida.
Yeah, I like Florida plus the points in this one. As you mentioned, Graham Mertz being out is, I think, big. Remember last week they're playing Missouri. They're down, I think, about the 18-yard line when Mertz went out, and Max Brown botched a handoff, fumbled. Missouri got the ball, and on 2 plays later, they got an 80-yard touchdown pass. And it's a completely different game. As opposed to Florida taking the lead in the game on the drive Mertz had rolling, they didn't. But Brown came off the bench, or then in his next 2 drives, led a field goal, led a touchdown drive, and they actually took the lead back against Missouri before giving up that 4th and 17. So I like the way Brown recovered from that mishap. And I also like the way Florida played. And they're actually 6-0 against the spread as a home dog. Remember, they were a home dog against Tennessee this year, beat them 29-16. Florida State's been playing really good. And, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Very sickening to see Jordan Travis go down last week. Tate Rodemaker, remember when Rodemaker came in the game against Louisville? I was like, okay, Louisville's got this game done. And as you mentioned, Rodemaker led the comeback win. And all of a sudden, it was a completely different game. And even last week, when Travis went out, I believe the score was 13-0.
Yeah,
North Alabama.
Yeah,
and he basically led them to all 58 points last week. So, but I lean with Florida plus the points. I love them as a home dog. I think it's going to be a great game. And last year when these two played, Jordan Travis did play. Florida State was playing so much better, and Florida was just sort of going through the motions. And it was still a 7-point game at the end of the game.
Yep.
Palmetto Bowl, Clemson is laying 7 on the road against their rival that they had beaten 7 years in a row in South Carolina, who was able to nip them. The Gamecocks got them by a point, 31-30 last year, ending that streak. And 53 is the total, 7:30 game on SEC Network. I think it's safe to say, Phil, with the Tigers on the outside, not even looking in, they have no chance of going to the playoff this year. It's been a very tumultuous season that Dabo Swinney has tried to, inject so much optimism each week. And again, we could thank Tyler from Spartanburg for a lot of that, at least over the last few games. But no lack of motivation for a Clemson team seeking revenge again and going into the home of their rival Gamecocks at 7:30 on Saturday.
Yeah, and South Carolina, I love what Coach Beamer's doing. They got to 2-6 this year. So basically you're like, okay, well, they're done. They're not going to a bowl game. He said, you know what? We're going to go to a bowl game. They beat, now granted, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Now the competition steps up. But this team's believing. Spencer Rattler is back to throwing the ball well. He's hitting 71% with a 19-7 ratio. Defensively, I think they're better than they were last year, and they did beat Clemson last year. But since that win over Notre Dame, when Dabo said buy stock in Clemson, they've been super impressive. And last week against North Carolina as well, I like the way that Maffa and Shipley are running the football. They're a little banged up at receiver, but they have a large edge on defense. This is one of the best defenses in the country, holding opponents to 84 yards per game below their season average, and they're playing with legitimate revenge. So I agree with you 100%. A lot of years Clemson's got to look ahead to the ACC title game and still won. This year they have no look ahead. I like Clemson, and I think the spread's 6.5, isn't it?
What do you see, Tripp? You got an update? Yeah, 6.5, 7.
Yeah,
I saw it at 7.
down
Could be
here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Right around there. Shop around.
Yeah. If you get a 6.5 on that, it's well worth it. But I think both teams will give a great effort. But I just think Clemson's a better team.
What about Kansas and Cincinnati? Do you have a lean on that one? I've got the Jayhawks -6, totals at 58. Cincinnati really struggling here. They've lost 8 out of 9. I was trying to look earlier today. I still haven't seen an update on Jason Bean. I don't know if you've heard anything there, Phil.
I think Bean will play for this one, which will make him a little bit different. Last week they were running the ball more. I came away impressed with Kansas. I like Kansas State last week. And I thought when Ballard tried it out on the field and after the first possession where they're just going to run the ball, I'm like, wow, K-State's going to win this thing huge. But at the end of the game, I mean, K-State blocked an extra point, returned it for 2. That gave them 3 points that they didn't deserve. Kansas fumbled a punt, gave Kansas State a late touchdown. And as it was, Kansas State only won the game by 4, with Kansas having a 60-yard edge against a very good K-State team. So I was very impressed with the way Kansas played. You could point the finger right at their head coach, Lance Leipold. I think he's one of the best in the country. And for Cincinnati, they scare you in the first quarter and a half of games. They play really well, and then they sort of fade away. Last week was a little different. West Virginia just punched them in the mouth. I believe our Joe Moore Award Committee gave West Virginia some motivation here. They just missed out on being a semifinalist. Neil Brown took it to heart, told his offensive line, look at this, and they just came out and pounded Cincinnati. 424 yards rushing, 9.2 yards per carry, 0 sacks. And I think Kansas's run game with Neal and Highshaw can do the same thing. So I like Kansas minus the points in this one. Not going to be a huge home edge for Cincinnati.
All right, one more game before we go to the late night chase. North Carolina on the road at NC State. All right, here's another team that I think I just need to avoid. Let me recap what NC State has done here lately. I loved them on the road at Duke. They lost 24-3. I hated them against Clemson. They win 24-17. I loved Miami on the road in Raleigh. They win 20-6. I liked Wake Forest in a little rivalry game here on Tobacco Road. They win by 20. And then I really liked Virginia Tech last week, and that was maybe my favorite pick of the week. And NC State just goes in there and wins in Blacksburg. I can't figure them out this week. I'm still seeing North Carolina as a 2.5-point favorite. Kind of an interesting series history here, because NC State in the last 10, they're 6-4 straight up, but UNC 7-3 against the spread in this series. You got to lean here, Phil?
Yeah, and basically, if NC State's 5-2 straight up the last 7 years, if they win, they cover, right? I mean, They don't have to cover a margin in this one. So it's a positive. I was a little surprised North Carolina was the favorite. When I look at NC State, after the Clemson game, Tripp, I would have said, hey, and I did say, they got out first down 21-9, completely outplayed. They somehow won the game. Against Miami of Florida, they got out first down 19-12. They got outgained, somehow won the game. So I liked Wake Forest as well. And then they sort of dominated Wake Forest. And then they dominated Virginia Tech, much worse than the final score would indicate. Once again, it even got me to switch stations from one of my main stations to one over here, which I don't even really pay attention to. So I'm impressed with the way Brennan Armstrong has played the last couple of weeks since MJ Morris redshirted. There is a clear defensive edge to NC State. They're holding opponents to 45 yards per game below their season average. North Carolina is allowing opponents 25 yards per game above their season average. North Carolina State can stop the run. North Carolina can't. I like the offensive weapons of Hampton and May for North Carolina, but Brendan Armstrong's playing well. I like North Carolina State, and surprised they're the underdog here.
All right, Phil, lucky number 13. We're going chasing late at night. I got 2 games for you. I'm going to pitch them both to you. I think you've got to lean on each of them, but if you feel strongly about another, do share, and then we'll get to your power plays and we'll get out of here and get a jump start on our Thanksgiving Thursday as we record a day early and come to all of you. Again, I'm thankful, all the listeners, all the viewers. Keep it coming. We appreciate it. It's been a successful year, too, the Phil Steele Show. Thankful for each of you, too, Tripp, Phil. But Cal at UCLA. The Bruins, they did it again against USC, and in dominant, convincing fashion last week. 9.5-point favorites now at home against the Golden Bears. 52 is the total, 10:30 on ESPN. Then there's also Fresno State, 5.5-point favorite on the road at San Diego State. 46.5 is the total, 10:30 on FS1. What do you think about either of those? Both? One more than the other?
Yeah, I'll pick the one I like more than the other, and that would be the San Diego State game against Fresno. One of the things that we had going against this trip with that San Jose last week was the fact that Brady Hoke announced that he was going to retire at the end of the year. Players like Hoke. Hoke's a very good coach, and I think this is his final home game. You're going to see maximum effort from San Diego State this week, and they're probably better than their record would indicate. They've had some close losses this year. 3 points to Colorado State, 6 points in Nevada, 3 points to Boise. I could go on that. And with Fresno, they seem to just be one. They were a lucky team to have a record of 8-1 at one point this year. In fact, in conference play, they are minus 76 yards per game. That's right where San Diego State is at minus 83. So you've got the final home game. You've got a Fresno team that is off two big losses. I love the way New Mexico moved the ball. New Mexico had a 528, 230-yard edge last week, and now they're going on the road. They've got a bowl wrapped up. There's really nothing to play for. San Diego State does. And what's the spread in this game?
I think 5.5.
Yeah, 5.5. I like San Diego State plus the points at home to pull the upset this week.
Okay, love it. What, Tripp, anything to add before Phil highlights his top 3 plays of the week? Do you have something that is really, that really wets your whistle more than anything else this weekend that you're most looking forward to?
I'm a little behind Phil. I don't have all the hay in the barn yet, but if there's one I definitely like right off the bat, it's Alabama. I'm definitely taking Alabama to cover. I'm really waffling back and forth on that over between Florida and FSU because I think it's only at 49.5. I know you've got 2 backup quarterbacks there, but there's still a lot of offensive firepower. I mean, you look at both of those rosters, Pearsall, Etienne, and then FSU, they're going to have Johnny Wilson back. They think he's pretty much healthy and ready to go now. Keon Coleman on the other side, Trey Benson. So I'm thinking about maybe pulling an over on that one, but I might have to let you know on Friday on the Felder Friday show.
You get a couple extra days. By the way, if you miss Phil with Wayne Cook, with Stephen Hartzell, go back in the College Sports Now podcast feed. And yeah, still another show coming after Thanksgiving with Felder, Hartzell, and the Lock Doctor Tripp. All right, Phil, what are your favorite plays here for Week 13?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 this week. A tough 1-2 week last week, but hopefully we bounce back. I like Ohio State as for the reasons I mentioned. I like Oregon for the reasons I mentioned. And then we'll pull one off the radar a little bit. I like Ball State plus the points at home against Miami. A couple of years ago, Miami had the MAC title game on deck. They led Ball State at the half by like 14, 17 points. Then they just started pulling starters in the second half. Ball State came back and won the game by double digits. Ball State's been playing real good at the end of the year, so I like Ball State plus the points over Miami, Ohio State, and Oregon.
Yeah, danger zone for Ball State. I heard you mention that one with Wayno and Hartzell. I'm going with Louisville. Again, 4 straight losses to Kentucky, lopsided losses. They are a far better team. They've beaten better teams all year long. Give me the 7 that they're laying at home against Kentucky. I wrote down FSU. I wrote down Arkansas. I was going to, circle back and go woo pig suey and just totally, put it all out there. However, I don't feel as strongly about either of those 2, Tripp. I know you like FSU, but Fresno, okay, you haven't decided yet. Phil has convinced me on Fresno, though, the 5.5 on the road, and then Washington State. Again, the number is just too big. 16.5? Like, come on. Washington has not been destroying opponents or covering these large numbers that have been presented. So give me Fresno as a favorite, Wazoo as an underdog, and Louisville as a favorite. Phil, you have a special offer available for our listeners, for our viewers. And again, we're at the end of the season, so we're looking ahead to 2024. What do you have for those who might want to get a jump start on what the college football season in 24 has in store for them in terms of, equipping themselves with the proper resources at the Phil Steele headquarters?
Now, as you know, the Phil Steele's magazine and Learfield are aligned. We're partners, and it's gone great. This past year was a tremendous year for the VIP. I sent the magazine to the press, I believe it was June 7th. And Learfield turned it around and had it available digitally on June 9th. So the magazine hadn't even been printed yet. And you could access the magazine and get it digitally if you're a VIP member. So all VIP members had it. We didn't open up access to the digital magazine for another month, but all VIP members were in. When you're a VIP member, you get the magazine first. As soon as the magazines were coming off the press, Kirk was there, Kirk Phillips, great guy. He's mailing out the magazines right off the press. That's just, once again, great association here with Learfield. Love that. And so the VIP members get them. They get them like the middle of June. It hits the newsstands July 4th. So you get it like 2 weeks before the newsstands. You get it digitally 3-4 weeks before the newsstands. You also got 4 free issues of Inside the Press Box, and you get an entire month of Phil Steele Plus for free. Well, this year, we've added to it, but only for a little bit. I got to be honest with you. Learfield did something that I wasn't wild about. I'll just show you this real quick. I'm not sure if we can get it on the screen, but if not, it'll be available on.
Yeah, hold it. Yeah, right there, Phil. Right there. Move it slightly. Yeah.
Yeah. And Anyway, it's the same VIP deal, but you also get this year we're adding a bowl and playoff digital guide, which will have FBS and FCS. That's $15. If you get the VIP deal before December 10th, you get that an extra $15 value on top of it. And then something Learfield added, which I wasn't crazy about, which was my Phil Steele Plus from right now all the way through September. As soon as Todd told me about that, I'm like, what? We got to stop that. I want it stopped. I want it stopped now. We're going to stop that December 1st. We're getting rid of it. But you could take advantage of it. Learfield put it out there. I wasn't happy about it, but you can actually get the Phil Steele Plus from right now all the way through September of next year. That's like 12 months of Phil Steele Plus included in the VIP deal. And it's all just $39.95. So go to philsteele.com, go to the store, and you can get it for $39.95. But if you do it after December 1st, forget about that Phil Steele Plus part. We're getting rid of it.
All right, so we have 9 days, 8 days, I guess, by the time you get to this, you watch, you listen. I mean, look, we're going against the grain here. We're doing something that the unicorn, the man, the myth, the legend himself does not want us to do, and our company, who signs our checks, Tripp, is going against, okay, the Godfather. And he's going to allow it. His hands are tied. So special VIP offer. It is available through December 1st. Phil just gave you the details. If you missed it, just hit rewind. Go back 15, 30 seconds. Easy on a pod. Scroll back on the Varsity channel on YouTube. Get all the information you need. That's why we love you, Phil. I appreciate it. You're a man of the people. We're just trying to help. We're not curing cancer. We're not delivering babies. But we are making some picks. And we are trying to set our future children and all of our endeavors up for life. So, and you are a big part of that. So thank you. I'm going to go gamble now at the casino. No, I'm going out to the water. I love it. What a great regular season, Phil. We'll link up offline. We'll figure out if a bowl or I don't know about championship. We'll talk about it offline. We'll get with Todd. Let's get through Thanksgiving. If this is the last time we talk for this year, again, thankful for all the listeners, all the viewers. Phil, you're great. You're incredible. Tripp, the Lock Doctor, you're so witty. And there's never a dull moment with you. You're so wise. You're so wise. And you help this thing just as much go. And be thankful for your own beating hearts, please. Because I smoked a deer, and that deer had a death wish. Suicide mission, gone. But I'm here in one piece. So I'm incredibly thankful to be here talking to each of you today.
There you go.
Enjoy that leap of faith.
I will. I'm going to shark slide. Here I go. He's Phil Steele, at Phil Steele 042, at Tripp Hurd, at Kyle Schass on Twitter, on X. That's been it for the Phil Steele Show. Bet smarter, not harder. Be more like Phil. Thank you, everyone.